Welcome to Fantasy Football Court. We are four regular guys talking all things fantasy football. Unlike some other shows, we only talk about fantasy football. We make our arguments, we present our cases, and you are the judge. We are all in the same fantasy football league. The people are real, the league is real, and the trash talking is real. Court is now. Welcome again to Fantasy Football Court. We're so glad you joined us for this episode. My name is Charles.
My name is Andrew.
My name is Nick.
And I'm Jeremy.
Today we're going to put the Philadelphia Eagles on the stand. We're going to cross-examine them and question them at all of their fantasy football positions. Before we get started with our overview, I just want you to know we are going to cover all the positions in depth. We're going to rank the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. So we are getting some questions about those things. We will get to them, we promise. It'll be in future episodes. Jeremy, what do you think of the Philadelphia Eagles right off the top?
I think much improved.
Yeah, much improved, lots of potential.
Yeah, they made some acquisitions that are really good if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I think they're going to compete in the East, for that title.
Yeah, I'm excited about the Philadelphia Eagles and a lot of the weapons that they have, and excited to see what's going to happen.
All right, we're going to start out with as we break down every position that's relevant to fantasy football with every team. We'll start with the quarterback. I do know that the Cleveland Browns traded out their pick, the number 2 pick, and I don't know if you know this, you can Google the story. 2 of their scouts went to the Cleveland Browns and said, look, we want this guy. We want Carson Wentz. And the owners of the Cleveland Browns fired those scouts. And, of course, Philadelphia got Carson Wentz, and he has turned out. But has not Cleveland needed a quarterback for a while?
Yeah,
what quarterback are they going to look at next year that could be the caliber of Carson Wentz? He has definitely surprised a lot of people this year. Jeremy, what do you think of Carson Wentz?
You know, I think he's still growing.
Oh, absolutely.
I will tell you, I spent some time with Carson Wentz at the Senior Bowl, and he's probably one of the smartest people I think I've ever talked to in my life. Now he's a little odd and a little different, but as far as just talking to him in just normal conversation, you walk away from the conversation saying, man, this dude is smart. And I think that translates on the field. When you watch him play quarterback, what do you think? A heady, smart quarterback.
Yeah.
I think that he will he will be much improved this year because they have put some weapons around him. I think he can almost step back and throw the ball with his eyes closed and complete the pass. Arguably, from top to bottom, the Eagles may have the number 1 receiving core talent-wise in the NFL this year.
You could make that argument.
They have got a top level thing, so I think that he will improve this year. I don't know that he cracks the top 8, but I think you've got to look at him as a low end wide receiver, running back, quarterback 1.
Exactly.
Some position 1 wherever he plays.
We're covering a lot of positions, so sometimes we get mixed up there. Nick, what do you think of the quarterback at
I
Philadelphia?
love Carson Wentz this year. He was a totally different quarterback when he had Lane Johnson protecting him. If he has Lane Johnson, he is a top 10 quarterback, no doubt about it. The problem was when he didn't have Lane Johnson last year, he struggled mightily. And Lane Johnson will be here for the whole season this year. He's no suspended, no injuries, nothing like that, well, barring injury. But they also had a Chance Warmack, who's been a so-so guard. We'll see if he can live up to the potential. But the weapons they add with Alshon Jeffrey and the weapons they added this year, I mean, he has potential to have a great year this year. And I think where you can get him is around the 13th rounds where he's right now projected. I think to me, it's kind of a bargain for me. I think I love Carson Wentz this year.
I like Carson Wentz also. Last year, he started off the first 5 or 6 games or so, solid. And then he ended up having almost as many interceptions as he did touchdowns, but there was a lot of problems on the offensive line like you were talking about. With the weapons he has this year, Carson Wentz is going to move up in that quarterback ranking.
Jeremy, you said in another show when we covered the Cowboys, you thought Dak Prescott would have somewhat of a sophomore slump. Do you not see the same thing here? You think he overcomes that?
I'm careful on him. I think there is possibility of that sophomore slump, but I'll say this. The mental I'm so impressed with how smart he is as a quarterback that I think if anybody can get around the sophomore slump,
Be him.
him, because he's so smart.
How do y'all feel? Go ahead, you got something?
Yeah, I was just saying, one of the reasons why I don't think the sophomore slump is going to affect Carson Wentz as much as Dak Prescott is he did struggle last year. He had to go through some struggles.
Yeah.
He had 14 interceptions, that offensive line struggled, and so he had a slump in the season. And it was mainly because but he has that experience now.
Right.
And so I think when it comes to comparing him to Dak Prescott didn't have those. Dak Prescott, they just asked him not to make any mistakes. They protected him. They gave him opportunities.
Only how
Carson
many?
Wentz had to earn
Well,
his.
Dak had a better core around him.
He did, absolutely.
And
So
I think that now, this year, Wentz has got almost as good of a core around him as Dak.
but Wentz has already experienced the slump.
I think you're
In a
gonna,
way, last year.
I think you're going to see the Carson Wentz. I think you're going to see the biggest jump with Carson Wentz in fantasy production this year out of any other quarterback.
Wow.
Last year he was 24th, had 3,782 yards, 16 TDs, and 14 interceptions, and 2 rushing TDs. With an improved offensive line and more weapons around him, he didn't have nothing but Jordan Matthews and Zach Ertz last year. That was it. And with that improved weapons, improved offensive line, I think he can make a huge jump.
I
this year.
agree.
And with the receivers, they've loaded him. They've given him in his toolbox. I agree with you. I think he could have a big year
Yes.
with what they've given. Let me ask y'all a quick question, and we'll move on. Are you okay with going into the first week of your season with Carson Wentz as your starting quarterback in fantasy?
If I have him, I'm going to draft my second quarterback a little higher,
Okay.
just for have protection.
I'm good with it.
You're okay with it? I'm like Jeremy. I'm not sure yet. I'm not ready to make that decision if I'm happy with that or not.
I am.
You ready? You think so? You think he could be a top 12 fantasy quarterback?
Starting off the season, I'm okay with him as my starter.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the running backs now, and I'm going to start with Nick on the running backs.
All right, the running back's an interesting situation. They have a loaded backfield. I think you're going to see Jordan Matthews be cut at some point. I don't see him lasting.
Ryan Matthews.
Ryan Matthews, not Jordan Matthews.
I know I always get them mixed up.
Well, yeah. Anyway, I don't see him lasting.
No relation.
I don't see him lasting the season. I'm interested to see. I don't see LeGarrette Blunt being the main back the whole season. I'm interested to see. I want to see which one comes out. I want to know, is it going to be Wendell Smallwood, or will it be the rookie Donnell Pumphrey? I think you're going to see one of them two take that running back role and take it from LeGarrette Blunt sometime in the season.
But do you see LeGarrette Blunt starting the season?
I think LeGarrette Blunt's going to be your starter at the beginning of the season, but I don't see him keeping it the
You
rest of the
didn't
season.
even mention Darren Sproles.
Darren Sproles, I don't think he's going to be, that every down. He's going to be the same thing he was last year, that receiving, third down running back. I think that's what you're going to get out of him. I don't think you're going to see him as that main
You
running
don't see his
back.
production. You see him about doing what he did last year.
Yeah, about the same. Maybe take a step back because he's getting up there in age.
Jeremy?
I think you'll see LeGarrette Blunt as the starter, Darren Sproles as the third down back, and then Pumphrey come in, or Smallwood. I think Smallwood may be a little better, but bring either Pumphrey or Smallwood in to spell LeGarrette Blunt on some breathers. I think that's how that's going to fall out. I still think, though, that LeGarrette Blunt gets 250-plus touches this year. And so he, in my opinion, he'll have 1,000-plus all-purpose yards.
Any thoughts?
When I think of Philadelphia's backfield, in the past, I've always thought committee, and this year it still has a feel of a committee, but I do think LeGarrette Blunt's going to be their main running back, and I agree with Jeremy. I think he gets a lot of touches this year, and believe it or not, I think he was number 2 in total touches last year behind Ezekiel Elliott.
He was number 1 in rushing touchdowns with 18 last year.
Yeah, number 1 in rush touchdowns, number 2 behind actual carries. And I think that carries over into this offense. And I like LeGarrette Blunt.
I was
for the
about to
Eagles.
say, I really think LeGarrette Blunt has a huge year. I think he thrives and flourishes in this offense. With the weapons that Carson Wentz has, and we're going to get into the receivers, with who they've added and how they can spread open the defense, I really think that LeGarrette Blunt could have a big year. Where's he currently being drafted? You have
His
him?
6th round.
6th round. You give me some LeGarrette Blunt in the 6th round, I'm doing the happy dance. He's another one of those players I believe is going to move up. If you draft early, get him later, but as he plays preseason, and I think as he gets comfortable with that offense, I think he goes up.
Yeah,
I must be in the minority because I don't like Garrett Blunt this year.
I do. I like
I'm
him.
going in. I mean, I'm not taking him before the 8th round.
Oh,
I do agree with Jeremy though as far as the passing downs. I think Darren Sproles comes in on that.
yeah, and that does hurt with
Yeah.
Garrett Blunt. That does hurt him there. All right, anybody else we want to talk about? We talked about Sproles. We talked about some of the other running backs. I think we pretty much covered them.
The Eagles have a decision to make. They got so many running backs
Yeah.
on their roster.
And I don't know if
I would watch.
they're going to cut who he said they're going to cut. They're going to have to cut somebody.
I would watch them when they. I think it's September 2nd, whatever the first week of college football is when they have to have their final
Final
roster
cut.
cuts down to 52.
Yeah.
I would watch them because you may very well see whatever running backs they cut get picked up by another team
Yeah.
and be put in a situation to be successful. So if you've already had your draft, I would have your phone set to get alerts that day. So while you're watching college football, you can see who gets cut and get ready to watch the signings because one of these guys may land in a pretty fortuitous situation.
Well, let me ask you this. You talked about that happening. Are these other running backs somebody you draft? I mean, do they go through your whole draft and
I'm
nobody
not a
drafts
little
them?
late at Wendell Smallwood. I just think he might take over that role from Garrett Blunt.
You know,
The only one I'm comfortable drafting is LeGarrette Blunt.
I'm talking about a flyer. I'm talking about 16th, 15th, 16th round.
If
Is
I'm
there
in
somebody you take a
if
chance
I'm
on?
late, I may grab Ryan Matthews, just hoping he lands somewhere where he gets some good playing time.
So we're pretty much of the opinion, or y'all are, that they're going to whack him.
Yeah, I believe so.
I think, given his contract, how much it is, given the fact that they get a lot of other players a lot cheaper, I just think that coming off injury, unproven, I think it makes sense that he may get cut.
Well, they've been talking since they drafted Donnell Pumphrey.
They've
He was-
already made the statement on July 4th on Independence Day. They said they're waiting on him to get cleared from his neck injury so they can release him. They've already came out with a statement.
Yeah.
Okay, so
As soon as he gets, so he's going to be released before that point.
but do you see another team picking him up?
I think there's
Yeah,
some
you gotta at
teams
least
that
give him a
struggle
shot.
running back wise.
Yeah, but that's a
But
risk.
I don't
That
draft
neck
him.
injury, that's a risky injury.
It is.
It is. It is.
I don't know. I don't know if anybody picks him up, honestly.
All right. Let's
I
go.
think somebody like a Baltimore may look at him. I think that he makes sense at the Chargers, which would devalue Melvin Gordon. I think there's a
I
few
just don't see him.
situations.
I don't see
I don't see him
anybody
taking that away from
Yeah,
anybody.
I don't see anybody picking him up really.
All right, that's yet to be seen. All right, let's go to the next position, that being the wide receivers. And I think this is the thing that surprised me most, of what they were able to do at wide receiver this year. I'll start with Jeremy first.
Let me read some names to you. Alshon Jeffrey, Jordan Matthews, Torrey Smith, Nelson Aguilar.
Wow.
That's not a Pro Bowl roster. That's the roster of the Philadelphia Eagles at wide receiver.
Wow.
If I'm not mistaken, every one of those wide receivers have made the Pro Bowl. Nelson Aguilar is my only question, but I know the other three. One has made the Pro Bowl at least once in the last 3 or 4 years.
Who are you most excited about, real quick, out of all that group?
Here's the problem. I think they're all so good that it's hard to get excited about one. I think they may cannibalize each other and devalue their numbers. I think they may all have big years, but I think that the problem with them is they may all three of them in Torrey Smith, Alshon Jeffrey, and Jordan Matthews, all three may end up having close to the same
It's
numbers.
a good problem for Carson Wentz to have, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Next,
I actually like Alshon Jeffrey this
Yeah, I do
year. It was the fact that he put up numbers the last 2 years without having really a quarterback in
Cutler?
Chicago. Yeah, Cutler, really? And last year I think it was Brian Hoyers, Cutler, who's the quarterback from USC that's San Francisco now? Barkley. Matt Barkley. I mean, you had quarterback after quarterback, which he did get suspended at the end of the season. I just think with Carson Wentz, I think he's primed for a big season this year. I like Alshon Jeffrey this year.
Thoughts on the receivers?
I really like Alshon Jeffrey this year. Another thing, Jeremy, this is one of your favorite stats. They signed a 1-year deal with him. He has to perform this year.
Yeah.
And I think he does. I think with Carson Wentz, I think he has a big year.
He needs a big
And his touchdown performances he had 2 touchdowns last year. 2.
Chicago Bears.
Chicago
Jay
Bears.
Cutler.
4 touchdowns the year before. The year before that, 10.
He hasn't really lived up to his potential, I believe, but I believe it's because of who he was with. I believe Carson Wentz and that offense will be a lot better for him. He's currently being taken at the end of the 3rd round in most drafts. I think that's a good value there. I think
6'3", 216,
Oh, he's a-
with Torrey Smith on the other side, who's
Yeah.
a speedster.
Jordan
I
Matthews.
think I think that you'll have Jordan Matthews possession guy. Torrey
Yeah.
Smith will take the top off the defense. I think Alshon Jeffrey, though, if you run Torrey Smith and Alshon Jeffrey down both sidelines on both go patterns,
Split the six.
then there's got to be the safety's got to pick one of the two.
Right.
I think safety reads Torrey Smith because he gets out a little further. Alshon Jeffrey being 6'3", out jumps. He's going to have several big
Well, I'll tell you,
plays.
defense is going to have a hard time covering those groups.
There's another thing too. Back in 2014, he had over 1,000 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns. And when he was with Chicago, the coach, I think his name's Groh, it's Groh, whatever was there.
Yeah.
Well, he is now with Philadelphia,
Oh, wow.
and they're now reunited in Philadelphia. And it was big time Alshon Jeffrey's show while he was there. And now that they're reunited, I think he has a big year.
Wow.
This is the first year, though, if I'm not mistaken, that Alshon Jeffrey is the clear #1 receiver on a team. Because wasn't he fighting with Brandon Marshall at Chicago for most of his
Right.
career thus far?
Again, the
Not
Bears
last year,
offense.
but
I mean,
yeah, Bears were awful. Bears were terrible.
But yeah, he's clear cut #1. I think he's going to have a big year. I really
Man,
do. If him and Carson Wentz can get a little bit of chemistry during the offseason and getting ready, I think he's going to have a big year.
But I will say this, he talked about the 1-year contract. If Alshon Jeffrey doesn't produce this year with
He's
this
done.
offense, as much hype as he came into the league with, I think pretty much people are going to give up on him.
The one thing we're overlooking, though, is he's missed 11 games in the last 2 years.
Yeah, he's injury
If
prone.
we're
Which
scared,
last
if
year
we're
it
scared
wasn't
of,
injury, it was suspension.
if we're scared about Dez missing games,
Well, he was also injured some too.
was
And
he?
he was, yeah, it was because
Yeah.
of a lower back injury or something
Oh,
like that.
Yeah.
so
I had him.
11 games in 2 years. That means he's only playing in an average of 10 games a year.
Yeah.
The four games he was suspended are on top of 11 he missed.
He might have done it on purpose just to get out of playing with the Chicago Bears.
Well, by that time, by the time he got suspended, their season was over, and he just made it want to take a chance of getting further injured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, you wouldn't say that out loud, and we're not accusing him of that. We don't know, but I think he's in a perfect environment for him to succeed where he's at. We'll just have to see if he does. It's just a matter of where you're comfortable taking Alshon Jeffrey. Like I said, he's currently in the 3rd round. If y'all find him at the beginning or anywhere in the 4th round, are you comfortable enough to take him? I am.
Alshon,
Oh, yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
I'd
Yes.
take him mid-third,
Mid-3rd.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
unless I have 2 wide receivers already.
So he is your #1 receiver off that team.
Absolutely.
The
Okay.
guys taken ahead of him, Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, Demarius Thomas, those are in the 3rd
I don't
round.
know
There's
that
a
I would
few of
take
those guys
either
I
one
might
of
take above
those.
him.
I would take Alshon Jeffrey above all 3 of them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I would take him over Brandon Cooks. too.
Ooh, I don't know that I'd do
I
that.
would.
All right. This is just a little preview of what you're going to see when we start getting down into who we think ought to be where, and that's when the debating,
The
the
trash
arguing,
talking.
the trash talking is really going to pick up. All right, let's go to the next position. He's got a plethora. See, I dropped that word in there
I
of
did.
wide receivers to throw to. What about the tight end? Jeremy, what do you think about the tight end position?
Zach Ertz, I think he's got to be a starting tight end somewhere in a fantasy thing. He's a top 10 tight end in my opinion. Last year they had some growing pains getting with Carson Wentz, but I just see him breaking out. The only fear I have is Jordan Matthews is kind of that mid-level type receiver. Him and Jordan may compete for some of those 10 and 12-yard passes, but I still see him finishing somewhere in that 7th to 10th range.
Nick, what do you think?
I like Zach Ertz a lot this year. He was the number 5 tight end in PPR last year. That's where he finished. That's pretty good. And this year is a contract year for him, so he's going to be playing for his money. And I just
I
think,
like how everybody's stealing my contract year thought.
I mean, I
I
went
think
back.
I've heard it before the
Well,
show ever
No,
started.
that's heck. When I drafted last year, that's a lot of players I picked. I looked for contract years. But anyway, I just think Zach Ertz with Carson Wentz being able to progress a lot, and the fact that some of the receivers take some pressure off, I think Zach Ertz is primed for a big year.
I agree. I think Zach Ertz is going to have a big year, and he's the main go-to. You got 2 other guys. You got Selleck and Trey Burton. I don't think they're going to be any effect at all unless Ertz goes down.
Those 2 will be more of run blocking tight ends.
Exactly.
Ertz is one of those players that I've been hearing, and I'm hearing it again this year. Ertz is going to have a great year, and he did finish pretty decent last year. But
Very decent. I mean,
Yeah, but I don't.
Not live.
That's good numbers.
Is he elite tight end? Is he right up there with Kelsey and Gronkowski?
No, there's nobody up there.
He's
with
in that
Kelsey and
second level.
Gronkowski.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
in the second level.
I think y'all are a little higher on him than I am. I think they're going to spread the ball out. They're going to throw off to the running backs, and I don't know that he has any better year than he had
I
last
think
year,
you
which is a
had that.
good year.
Yeah, I think you had that top tier, which is Gronkowski, Kelsey, and Olsen. And I think and you might could, depending on how you feel about Jordan Reed, you might could throw him in there, and then you got kind
Not
of
in
that
the
second.
top.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put Jordan Reed.
Then you
in
got
the
that second tier, and I think that's where Zach Ertz
I
is.
think Zach Ertz falls in that second tier, though, toward the bottom of the
I
second
agree.
tier, top of the third tier. He
I agree
is
with you.
right there on that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 mark.
I agree. All right. Let's talk about the defense. Nick, do you have any information on the defense?
I'll let Jeremy answer this one first.
Well, their defense as they start the year, I kind of like some of their matchups in the first 4 weeks. They open the season at Washington, which could give or take, could be a decent
Yeah,
matchup,
that's a wash almost.
may not be. Then you got at Kansas City, which I think Kansas City's offense is going to struggle a
Yeah.
little bit this year. You got the New York Giants, which Eli Manning is good for 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
And then you got the Los Angeles Chargers, which could be back and forth there. Last year, they were league average in rushing yards. They were 15th in yards allowed. Passing defense, they were 13th. So I think that you're looking
Middle of the road.
middle of the road average defense on their season last year.
Andy, you got anything on the defense?
I'm not real big on the defense. I've got them somewhere in the middle. Right?
Yeah, that's kind of me. I don't really have a whole lot to say either. I'm with these guys. There's not really much to talk about.
I think they improved this year. They traded and got Timmy Jernigan from Baltimore. I think he's
They
going
had
to
a
be
couple
good.
of draft picks too.
Yeah, and then they added Derek Barnett in the draft, and they added not Quincy Wilson, Sidney Jones from Washington as a second round. I love Sidney Jones as a corner. If he wouldn't have got hurt, he'd been in the first round. And they also signed veteran Patrick Robinson from Indianapolis. I just think their defense is going to improve this year. I think they added some pieces, some pass rushers, a little bit in the secondary. Previous years, they just been plugging veterans in there. It seems like they're trying to get some younger guys with some potential in that secondary, which is going to hurt them a little bit last year. But I think they're still. I think by the end of the year, I think some of them, the secondary guys, will improve, and I think they'll be a lot better.
The secondary is their question mark. They did part ways with Leotis McKelvin and Nolan Carroll.
Yeah.
I think both started at some point
I
last
think
year
both of
for
them were
them,
their starters.
but both underachieved last year.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
I
for
think
them.
with Patrick Robinson and then Sidney Jones is the two they came in this year.
How do you feel going into week 1 in Philadelphia as your starting defense? You don't feel great, do you?
I haven't looked at their matchups. Just depending on-
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
There's nothing really to get excited about. No different much than their mid-range defense.
Yeah.
All right, we're not going to waste too much more time on them. The next position we cover, we don't really cover a whole lot, but because they're so uncertain as what they're going to get week to week. You know, you can look at a quarterback or a wide receiver or a running back, and they have kind of an average of what they get. But man, a kicker can have 17, 18 points one week and 2 or 3 points the next week. But what do you think of the kicker?
Caleb Sturgis, he's coming off of his best year yet last year. And with this offense improving, I think he'll have even more opportunities. He finished as a top 4 kicker last year. He's a good one to have on your team.
4 to 6 from 50 plus, which is the stat Andrew likes.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we get more points. Now, you probably do too at your league. If a kicker kicks beyond 50, you get more points. Any thoughts on the kicker?
No.
All right. I think we'll wrap it up here. We'll give our final conclusion of what we think of the Philadelphia Eagles, and we'll end the show. Any final thoughts?
A lot of fantasy options. I think Alshon Jeffrey's going to have a big year, and Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I can't say it any better. I agree with what he said. Any thoughts?
Just a big. I think a big year from Carson Wentz and Alshon Jeffrey and possibly Zach Ertz.
Offensive firepower.
Yeah.
Be excited to see how it pans out.
Right.
This will be interesting. All right. Hit us up on social media.
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, @FFPort.
If you have any questions, anybody you want us to speak specifically about, or anything that you want us to cover, just message us on our social media, and we'll cover it in an upcoming episode for you.
Port is adjourned.